Terrence Howard is breaking decades of silence with a fearless exposé that's shaking the foundations of the entertainment industry. In a raw and unfiltered revelation, he lays bare the dark and disturbing reality of power, control, and exploitation behind the glitz and glamour. Howard exposes a chilling list of men who, driven by ambition and fear, allegedly sold their lives to Diddy, becoming trapped in a web of manipulation, blackmail, and loyalty, bought at a devastating cost. This isn't just Hollywood gossip, it's a candid look at the hidden machinery of influence where careers are made or destroyed, and integrity is a rare commodity. Brace yourself for the truths that many wanted buried, but Terrence Howard is determined to bring to light. The cost of power. Terrence Howard's stark warning on manhood and the music industry. Terrence Howard's candid reflections reveal a brutal truth that many in the entertainment world rarely speak of openly. The sacrifice of one's manhood in exchange for success comes at an irreparable cost. When you give up those things, but when you give up your manhood, Howard states with solemn gravity, I've never seen somebody recover from it. This is not just about a metaphorical loss, but a deep, spiritual break. A shattering of identity and dignity that leaves a person hollow, forever changed. Howard points specifically to those who attended the infamous Puffy parties, gatherings hosted by hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs that were cloaked in secrecy and dark undertones. These events, he implies, were arenas of power plays where the price of entry was often much higher than most understood. Young men, especially rising stars, were lured into compromising situations, believing they could navigate these dangerous waters unscathed. But Howard's warning is clear. There are always consequences, and once that man card is lost, the path back is virtually impossible. I believe that's a big problem with a lot of the actors out there, Howard laments. They get fluid, and next thing you know, once they're fluid, it's gone. The dark rituals of celebrity parties, a web of silence and submission. Howard's revelations extend beyond personal reflections to a wider indictment of an elite circle of celebrities and industry power players. There's a lot of people that were waiting for the next white party, he says, referring to these exclusive gatherings notorious for their secrecy and exclusivity. These parties were not just social events, they were mechanisms of control, where the same faces appeared again and again, and those who dared to speak out soon fell silent after arrests or scandal. Howard describes this pattern as no coincidence, but a deliberate list of individuals who paid a hidden price. For years, insiders whispered about the who gave what, who saw what, who kept the tapes, secret transactions and recordings that maintained power dynamics behind closed doors. But until Howard spoke out, no one dared to name names openly. In breaking this silence, Howard exposes a disturbing reality, a circle of celebs who sold their V-card, not as a random occurrence, but as a calculated trade for success, access, protection, and influence. Commodities unattainable through talent alone. The names behind the curtain, the price paid for fame. Howard's courage in naming names marks a seismic shift in Hollywood's culture of secrecy. Among those he mentions are Justin Bieber, Stevie J, Meek Mill, Cuba Gooding Jr., and Russell Simmons, figures who have dominated headlines for various reasons, but whose connections to this dark web have long been the subject of speculation. Some of these celebrities stayed close to the powerful, while others distanced themselves or were caught on camera in compromising situations. Yet all were aware of the stakes because, as Howard reveals, Diddy wasn't just hosting parties, he was collecting people. This phrase paints a chilling picture of how the industry's elite amassed influence, not just through business deals, but through personal ownership and control of vulnerable talent. Breaking the Code: Terrence Howard's Revelations on Hollywood's Hidden Economy. When Howard sat down with interviewer Patrick Bet-David, he wasn't promoting a project or sharing typical celebrity anecdotes. Instead, he was breaking a code, exposing the harsh reality of how power is wielded in Hollywood. He described how the price of advancement often involves giving up your dignity, a currency few are willing to admit they've paid with. Howard alluded to the tragic fates of actors like Philip Seymour Hoffman and Heath Ledger, talents whose deaths were shrouded in mystery and pain. Who knows what Heath had to do to get to where he was at? He asks rhetorically, suggesting that beneath their success lies trauma, exploitation, and a desperate need to numb the past. Many, he explains, resort to drugs or other means in futile attempts to erase the haunting memories of what they sacrificed. Losing the man card: the unforgiving loss of identity. Central to Howard's message is the concept of the man card, a symbolic representation of a man's honor, agency, and self-respect. You give up your ability, your right to be a man, Howard says. A man doesn't take it. A man gives it. This principle underscores the idea that manhood is not something one loses passively. It's something forfeited under pressure or coercion. Howard's stark assertion is that once lost, the man card cannot be regained. You come into this world as a man one time, he says, emphasizing the permanence of this loss. The implication is profound. Fear, manipulation, or desperation may drive a man to surrender this identity, but doing so leads to a form of existential defeat. Justin Bieber, a cautionary tale of manipulation and trauma. Howard's critique sharpens when he singles out Justin Bieber's story as emblematic of this pipeline of power and sacrifice. Bieber, brought into the industry at a tender age, was taken under Diddy's wing, invited to sleep at his house, whisked away on wild trips, and exposed to an adult world far beyond his years. What appeared to outsiders as mentorship, Howard describes as a carefully orchestrated form of grooming. Exposure, manipulation, and emotional trauma packaged as guidance. Bieber's infamous moment on camera, where Diddy checks his wire, was not paranoia but a warning. Don't talk. Don't reveal what you've seen or done. Fast forward to today, and Bieber's struggles, his crumbling marriage, loss of support, and retreat from the spotlight are understood in a new light. Howard frames it not as burnout or fatigue, but as trauma inflicted by an exploitative system. Bieber didn't walk away from Diddy clean, Howard insists. He walked away haunted by the things he was told to do, haunted by what he had to give up. The industry pipeline: Usher, Naomi Campbell, and the gatekeepers of power. The story doesn't end with Bieber. Howard exposes a broader pipeline in which emerging talent is funneled through a gauntlet of power brokers. Usher, who faced his own career challenges, is said to have paid in silence to climb back to the top. Once embedded in this system, he became responsible for bringing in new talent, including Bieber, perpetuating the cycle. Naomi Campbell's role in this dark ecosystem is equally complex. A towering figure in fashion, Campbell was a fixture at Diddy's private gatherings, both attending and orchestrating the optics. After public scandals surfaced, she strategically erased her ties, but insiders suggest her involvement went deeper, including allegations that she willingly participated in the trade of favors and introduced young aspiring models into the fold. Campbell's own legal troubles and volatile behavior, like the incident where she threw a phone at an employee, highlight the emotional toll and toxic dynamics pervading this world. Her story is one of power, vulnerability, and survival amid a ruthless industry where even the most glamorous are not immune. Behind closed doors, the human toll of a dark industry. Terrence Howard's revelations expose a stark, unsettling truth beneath the glittering surface of the entertainment world, a realm where human dignity is often sacrificed for fame and fortune. While the public sees dazzling success stories, the reality behind those achievements is far grimmer. Aspiring stars enter this world full of hope and talent, but quickly face a treacherous maze of manipulation, coercion, and moral compromise. The price of survival is high. Personal boundaries are tested, dreams are tainted, and trauma becomes an unspoken burden. Howard's plea to maintain one's man card is more than just a call to courage. It's a demand to preserve one's core identity and integrity amid relentless pressures to conform or stay silent. His brave decision to speak out pierces the industry's veil of secrecy and control, offering a glimmer of hope for accountability and change. Yet it also serves as a sobering reminder of how many have suffered in silence, victims trapped in a system that values power over humanity. The trip that changed everything: fear and isolation. There was a trip, a defining moment, that left a deep scar on one individual's psyche, an experience so terrifying that its impact continues to reverberate years later. This was no ordinary journey. It was a dark initiation into a world many only whisper about behind closed doors. "Someone that terrified me on that trip," she recalled, her voice trembling slightly as the memory resurfaced. The fear wasn't just from one person, but the atmosphere itself, an unspoken dread of what was to come. During this trip, she was abruptly sent home, told that she was no longer wanted there. Yet, deep down, she knew the official reason was a lie. There was something far more sinister at play, an invisible hand pulling strings behind the scenes. This moment marked the beginning of a profound realization. The luxurious glitz of the industry masked an underworld of coercion and control, where power was wielded in the shadows, and people were pawns in a much larger game. Naomi Campbell and the Web of Influence. Naomi Campbell's name has long been synonymous with fashion royalty, a supermodel with global influence who walked the world's most prestigious runways and graced countless magazine covers. Yet beneath the surface of her glamorous public persona lies a complex network of relationships and power dynamics linking her to some of the most notorious figures in elite circles. Her extended network includes men like Ron Bacall, Ori Spano, and Jeffrey Epstein, names that conjure images of wealth, influence, and scandal. Bacall, for instance, is not just a figure in Campbell's orbit, but also served as a godfather to Diddy's children, illustrating how tightly interwoven these circles are. Epstein's name, forever linked to dark allegations of trafficking and abuse, appears repeatedly on flight logs that intersect with the lives of those close to Naomi. Ori Spano, rumored to be a fixer with mob connections, allegedly handled threats and stalkers with muscle tied to Campbell's entourage. Emails leaked from Epstein's files reveal a friendly relationship between Campbell and Epstein, despite the mounting evidence against him. In a rare interview, Naomi addressed her connection to Epstein, saying she met him at her 31st birthday party through her ex-boyfriend Flavio Briatore. "He was always front and center at the Victoria's Secret shows," she noted, attempting to downplay the gravity of the association. The burden of public scrutiny and isolation. Naomi Campbell's vast experience attending hundreds of public events worldwide has left her acutely aware of the dangers of association in this environment. "How many people do you think you've rubbed shoulders with?" she was asked. Her reply was telling, "Hundreds of thousands." But she lamented how, despite these countless encounters, only a select few are singled out and scrutinized. This hyper-focused attention creates a chilling effect on anyone in the public eye. Photographs at events, once tokens of celebration, now carry the weight of potential scandal. It's going to be very difficult to be photographed at public events because you're going to think if you do take a picture, it's going to be taken out of context and used in a negative way. This realization has ushered in a new era of caution and isolation, where the fear of association with scandal can shape careers and personal lives. Stevie J. Loyalty born from compromise. In the murky world surrounding Diddy, Stevie J stands out as a figure whose loyalty raises as many questions as it answers. Contrary to popular belief, Stevie J's defense of Diddy is not rooted simply in friendship or camaraderie. It is born of necessity. Gene Deal, a longtime insider, revealed that back when Biggie was alive, Stevie J was not part of the inner circle. He was an outsider, on the fringes of power. But as the years passed and Diddy's empire grew, Stevie found himself more deeply entwined, always the loyalist who stepped up when trouble brewed. Every time the house catches fire, who's standing in the smoke? Stevie. Loud, loyal, always available, Deal explained. Stevie J became the cleanup man, the go-to guy when things needed to be contained or spun, someone who had already been compromised and thus could not afford to walk away. A former personal bodyguard for Stevie J provided an intimate perspective. At one time, Stevie was like a little nephew to me, back when he was making all those hits at Bad Boy. But I know when Stevie started talking gangster stuff, he was never really that type. That's the drugs talking. He emphasized that Stevie's gangster posturing was more performance than reality, an effect of drug use clouding judgment. The shadow of blackmail and psychological control rumors have swirled for years about the nature of Stevie J's relationship with Diddy. Speculation not just of friendship, but of intimate involvement, and more disturbingly, of control through blackmail. Allegations surfaced that Diddy possessed explicit footage of Stevie, not just for insurance, but as a weapon to enforce compliance and silence. Court documents even suggest that Diddy used this tape as psychological leverage over Lil Rod, a young producer who idolized Stevie J. During a critical moment, Diddy allegedly played the tape to Lil Rod, shattering the producer's admiration by exposing Stevie's hidden vulnerability and complicity. Whether Lil Rod truly recognized the figure on tape or was manipulated to believe it was Stevie, the effect was devastating. This type of control is more than blackmail. It is psychological warfare. Once such a tape exists, the subject's freedom evaporates. There is no walking away from Diddy's machine. Visibility becomes currency. The more compromised you are, the more loyal you must be. Cuba Gooding Jr. From Inner Circle to Allegations. Cuba Gooding Jr.'s name appears in this dark narrative not as an incidental bystander, but as a central figure implicated in a federal lawsuit that exposes the darkest corners of this industry. Rodney Lil Rod Jones, a producer suing Diddy, alleges that Cuba was more than just a guest on a yacht. He was an active participant in a disturbing chain of events. According to the lawsuit, after Diddy groomed and broke down Jones emotionally, Cuba aggressively groped Jones multiple times, touching his thighs, lower back, and shoulders. Jones had to physically push Cuba away to end the assault. Diddy, present throughout, allegedly did nothing to stop it, underscoring that this was no spontaneous misstep, but part of a ritualized pattern of exploitation. Friends and observers were stunned by these allegations. One insider remarked, "I would have thought Cuba was his lady." That's how close they were. The shock deepened with the understanding that this behavior was not an isolated incident, but part of a recurring pattern. Patterns of abuse and the machinery of exploitation. This lawsuit reveals something far more insidious than individual misconduct. It uncovers a system where exploitation is not an aberration, but an ingrained practice. Cuba Gooding Jr., despite his public persona, has faced over 30 allegations, settled quietly with payouts, and navigated a media blackout designed to preserve his career. His defense rests on distancing himself from Diddy, claiming ignorance of the larger scandal. Yet, being on the yacht, part of the inner circle, and allegedly involved in abuse paints a very different picture. The lawsuit depicts a pipeline where young aspirants are groomed, passed around, and used as currency. The implications are clear. This is not about one predator or one victim. It is about a machine, an interconnected web of power, abuse, and silence, where everyone has a role. And complicity is both a survival strategy and a form of control. Terrence Howard's unflinching truth. Unlike many who stay silent or equivocate, Terrence Howard took a different path. He didn't hint at the truth. He didn't whisper behind veiled language. He sat down, eye to eye with the camera, and spoke plainly. Name by name, system by system, sacrifice by sacrifice. Terrence laid bare the intricate web that sustains this dark underbelly of the entertainment world. His revelations weren't just about individuals, but about a systemic culture of exploitation and silence. Yet, the fallout for Howard was immediate and fierce. Hollywood is a place where speaking out can come with a steep price. After naming high-profile figures like Diddy, Usher, Cuba Gooding Jr., and Naomi Campbell, Howard found himself ostracized. Invitations to prestigious events like the Emmys stopped coming. Whispers turned into threats. His character was undermined with carefully crafted narratives, painting him as unstable, delusional, or bitter. Tactics designed to erase his voice before the public could connect the dots. The battle behind the scenes. The names Terrence called out weren't taking his accusations lightly. Behind the polished facades and velvet ropes, the wheels of power began to turn frantically. Lawyers circled like vultures, PR teams launched damage control efforts, and executives pulled strings to silence him. Deals were canceled. Deals that might have propelled his career forward vanished into thin air. Platforms that once welcomed his voice closed their doors. This wasn't just a professional setback. It was a targeted campaign to erase him. Howard knew what was coming. That's why he didn't retreat. Instead of apologizing or recanting, he doubled down. Going back online, he confronted his critics head-on. Not with meekness, but with defiance. He challenged those who wanted to silence him, daring them to prove him wrong. His message was clear. Listen before you talk about me. Talk to me. A call for courage and integrity. Terrence Howard invoked an old-world code of honor to make his point. Once upon a time, men who questioned another's honor did it openly, with their names and reputations on the line, standing tall and proud, not hiding behind screens or legal loopholes. He reminded his detractors that the so-called protections under copyright law, such as fair use claims, do not give anyone a free pass to defame or misrepresent him. He spoke with the weight of a lifetime's experience, asserting his right to speak truths with conviction. If anyone wished to challenge his statements, Howard demanded they do so directly, like men, face to face, and with respect. He urged critics to come armed not with smears or digital edits, but with substantive counter-arguments, new theories, evidence, or research to dispute his claims. Otherwise, he warned, the debate would end in a duel, a confrontation where only one would walk away, whether with guns, knives, bottles, or even books and equations. The turning point, from silence to danger. This moment marked a new chapter in Howard's story. When a star falls out of favor with Hollywood, loses financial backing, and sees their handlers abandon them, they become dangerous. Not because they act recklessly, but because they become truly free. Howard was no longer pitching a polished story. He was drawing a definitive line in the sand. The people he called out spent decades making sure that line was never drawn. They thrived in the shadows, keeping secrets, controlling narratives, and silencing dissent. But now, the line was there for all to see. The silence was breaking. If Howard's revelations hold any truth, the real story isn't just about what happened at those infamous parties or behind closed doors. It's about who kept the lights off, who enabled the system to operate unchecked,